Lucy has gotten even worse. She's pale, she's gaunt. Van Helsing tells Seward that she's going to need a blood transfusion, and she basically asks him right out if Seward and Van Helsing and Arthur have all done the transfusion process previously, and Seward confirms it. The wolf crashes through the window. Lucy still looks pretty sick. Again, not improving as much as before after the transfusions. Lucy falls back asleep. Her breathing eventually stops. And that's the unfortunate end of Lucy Westenra. Hello world, welcome back to my Dracula vlog. We are on installment 5. We are really in the middle of things now. Our last installment on Monday saw our first main character death. Things are starting to pick up. Things are going to be a bit more exciting. We're going to see our characters take more action. Today we are dealing with chapters 13, 14, and 15. So let's get into it. Chapter 13 starts off with Seward and Van Helsing planning Lucy's funeral. I guess she had no other family members. They're planning it very quickly because they want her and her mom to have a funeral together. Arthur is also working on his father's funeral, this poor man. And it's kind of a shame that in all this planning that no one tells Mina. None of them really know her. So I guess it kind of makes sense, but I'm just sad for Mina that she couldn't be there. Van Helsing is also going over Lucy's paperwork. He's trying to get information on how this all happened, but he also makes a comment to Seward that along with being a doctor, he's also a lawyer. And I was like, you are? How many degrees did this man get? Or was he just going to school so long ago that it was just like, you're very smart and you have read a lot of books. Here, we will give you a doctorate. Here, we will give you a law degree. Then Van Helsing and Seward go to visit Lucy where she is laid out to rest in the house, and he puts a crucifix on her mouth and some garlic around her. Van Helsing then mentions to Seward his plan after the funeral. He plans to, how do I word this? I don't know if it's okay for me to say this, so I'm just gonna mime it. He wants to Lucy's and yeah.
And scene.
And Seward is understandably horrified, but Van Helsing asks him to trust him and brings up how when he pulled Arthur away when Lucy was dying, they didn't really understand it, but then Lucy wound up thanking him, and he's basically just like, she trusted me, you trust me, just go along with this for me. I know what I'm doing, just follow along here. The next morning, Van Helsing remarks to Seward he's too late because somebody had stolen the crucifix in the middle of the night, but Van Helsing also now has it. Another solicitor, still haven't quite figured out what that means yet, comes to the house and explains how Lucy's mom had left everything to Arthur in her will, house and all their money, and like he's a lord, so does he really need it? But basically the solicitor also mentions that this was a good thing because Lucy didn't have a will. So Lucy's mom hadn't left stuff to Arthur, hadn't left everything to Arthur. It would have been left to Lucy, but then Lucy died right after. So then it would have gone to like some random family member. Arthur then arrives at the house and he thanks Seward for all of his help throughout the whole process, and he cries and breaks down. I feel really bad for this guy. They then all go to see Lucy together, and Lucy looks so good that Arthur actually asks Seward, like, are we sure that she's really dead? For Van Helsing, this is a sign of what's happening or to come. Arthur is just probably distraught, so he's not thinking much of it. And then Seward, as a doctor, knows that Lucy should not look like she's still alive, so he is a little unnerved as well. The guys all have dinner together, and at the dinner, Van Helsing consoles Arthur and tells him that he loves him, and it's just a really sweet moment. We love to see these men supporting each other and bonding during this emotionally trying time. They also talk about trust, and Arthur assures Van Helsing that he trusts him, and Van Helsing admits that he will be asking Arthur to trust him even more in future endeavors. And that is the understatement of the century. We then take a break from the guys and go back to Mina's journal. Her and Jonathan had traveled to London for Hawkins's funeral. It was a very simple service. They were basically the only two people there. Again, I guess he didn't have much family. After the funeral, the two walk around London, enjoying the sights. They walk around Piccadilly Circus, and though it is a sad day, things seem to be going fairly well until all of a sudden Jonathan gets very anxious and Mina gets worried for him. At first she thinks that maybe it's just an episode, but then she follows his gaze and finds him staring at a man with a cruel face and red eyes. That's right. Good old Count Dracula is out and about living his life in London town. Again, the coincidences that play, because what are the chances in this big city? But you know what? Then again, the world is small, and the amount of times that I've been in random cities and run into people who are not from those cities, it's happened quite a few times. So I'll buy it. Jonathan starts absolutely freaking out. He's saying like, that's the Count, oh my god, that's that guy that just tortured me. Now remember, Mina doesn't know what happened in Romania. She promised him she wouldn't read his journal. He never told her what happened. It's just very confused, and so she leads him away into a park where she sits him down on a bench to try and calm him down. And then Jonathan Harker does what he does best and falls asleep and takes a nap on the bench. I guess he's just so afraid that he passes out, but it's not even like he faints. He just sits there and closes his eyes and dozes off. It's like, you know how everybody has flight or fight? Jonathan Harker has a third option, and it's nap. And then when he wakes up, he doesn't remember what happened at all and just thinks that he wound up falling asleep on Mina while they were sitting in the park. Mina doesn't want to ask him any more questions that afternoon. She doesn't want to send him off anymore, but she realizes that she's going to have to learn what happened in Romania, and she decides to read his journal. And she hopes that he will understand and forgive her for it. But clearly something happened, and she needs to know about it. Smart lady. She then receives a telegram from Van Helsing about Lucy and her mother's death, and he sends it out on the day of the funeral. So Mina is very sad about the passing of her best friend and also her best friend's mom, who she was close to both women. So Van Helsing, in going through Lucy's paperwork and her journals, had read about Mina and about the time they spent together in Whitby and how Lucy had been having the sleepwalking and Mina was there for her. So he then follows the trail and realizes whatever happened, however Lucy became a vampire, Mina might have been there for or witnessed something. So that's why he reaches out to her. Then we go back to the guys, and they are leaving the West End mansion for good. In the carriage ride, Arthur makes a comment about how even though he and Lucy never got to exchange vows or be married, he considers them married in God's eyes because they shared blood and he gave her blood. And all the rest of the guys in the carriage are like, yeah, bro, yeah, sure, that makes sense. Wait, just one time. What are we doing? After Arthur and Quincy leave the carriage, Van Helsing then kind of has a fit of both laughing and crying. I think he's just so overcome with emotion. Seward is just very confused. He's like, I don't understand why, one, he's crying so much, and then two, why he's laughing about things. I kind of get it because, I don't know, when you have just so many emotions, they'll kind of come out. And Van Helsing has a whole long monologue about real laughter, what's not real laughter, but then also about the irony of the whole situation. And I'm like, see, he gets me. He also mentions that Arthur reminds him of his son that he lost, which is an interesting insight into Van Helsing's character. Seward can't understand the laughing and doesn't really understand the joke, even though it's not a joke. I don't know, for somebody who deals in like psychology, he doesn't seem to very much understand human emotion. Then there's a diary entry where Seward claims it'll be the last time he's writing. If he ever does start up a diary again, it'll be about different people, different situations, and this basically ends this chapter of his life and this traumatic experience. We end chapter 13 with another newspaper article. This time, this one is talking about children who are mysteriously going missing in the middle of the night. They show back up in the morning, claiming that a beautiful lady lured them away. They also have 2 pinprick marks in their necks. Also, this is all happening in the town where Lucy is buried. Chapter 14, Mina decides that she's going to read Harker's journal. She's set on figuring out what exactly went down in that castle in Romania. And so then she reads it, and I have to wonder if she wonders why he sleeps so much. Then afterwards, she is just horrified by what she read in there, and she doesn't know if it's real or fake. But this is why I love Mina so much and what sets her apart from all the other characters in the book. Because even though she is just baffled by what she read and it seems like fiction, or maybe she says Jonathan had a fever or gone mad, she doesn't know if it's real or fake, but there may be a solemn duty, and if it come, we must not shrink from it. I shall be prepared. I shall get my typewriter this very hour and begin transcribing. Then we shall be ready for other eyes if required. Basically, she's saying that it could be real, it could be fake, but if it on the off chance that it is real, she's going to be ready, and she's going to make sure that this diary has copies and can be read and dispersed to different people if they need it. And so many other characters throughout the previous 13 chapters have just been so passive and with the mindset of things can't be as bad as they seem, so I'm not going to take action. We talked about Harker's passivity while he was in the castle and how it took him so long to actually get into action. And the captain on the ship, he didn't really believe that there could be somebody like terrorizing his crew, and we saw how that turned out. And even the guys with Lucy, they tried their best. They could have taken other steps. Maybe try moving her out of the house, and probably Dracula would have found her, but I don't know, try something. Put her in a hospital where you can have blood transfusions like at the ready. Put her in a place with no windows, I don't know, try. And then Seward was told explicitly not to leave her side. And the first night he did so, everything was fine, but immediately the next night he's already slacking off and being like, well, I'll just stay in the other room, and if she needs me, she'll call. Nobody knows how bad it actually is. Everyone's just not being very proactive. Everybody else is playing checkers. Mina is playing chess. She is going to be proactive. She's going to be ready no matter what, just in case. And I love her for it. Van Helsing writes to Mina asking if he can come visit. Again, he's just trying to put the pieces together about what happened to Lucy. He knows that Mina was there and she could provide him with more information. And Mina says, sure, come right over. There's a part of her that wonders if she'll be able to get some answers on Jonathan as well, because she's intuitive as hell apparently, but she also reminds herself that this is about Lucy. And another part of her feels very guilty. In her mind, Lucy passed away because of an illness she picked up when she had the sleepwalking incident where she escaped from the house, and she worries that she didn't do enough. Van Helsing and Mina meet. He explains why he's there, and he asks her if she can tell him more about it, and she assures him that she can. And he makes a comment, then you have good memory for facts, for details. It is not always so with young ladies. Sir. Mina's like, well, I wrote it all down. So he's like, oh, cool, can I see the journal? She's like, yeah, here you go. And it's all in shorthand, which Van Helsing can't read. Mina's like, you want to insinuate that I'm dumb? I'm going to show you you are dumb. She's just in a little silly, goofy, pranking mood. And Van Helsing laughs. He's very good humored like that. And so he just asks if she can read the journal for him. And she says, oh, no need. Because, as usual, Mina is one step ahead. And she has already typed out her journal in regular writing, so it is easy for him to read, and she just gives him the papers. Van Helsing is very impressed, and he gives her lots of compliments, as he should. He then inquires about Jonathan and how he's doing. Again, he knows from Lucy and Mina's correspondence that he was in the hospital and wasn't doing so well, and Mina winds up breaking down and begging for his help, knowing that Van Helsing is a doctor, and if it's health related, maybe he can offer some assistance. Luckily for her, it's not health related, and Van Helsing can still offer assistance. Mina asks him not to laugh at whatever he reads. Van Helsing in turn says that if she really knew what he suspected, she might laugh at him, and it's this kind of ironic moment. Mina gives Van Helsing the typed up copy of Jonathan's journal entries. He leaves, reads it, and winds up writing to her later that night, saying that as strange and terrible as it all seems, it's all true. Mina is kind of shocked, but not deterred, and she asks Van Helsing to come back to the house the next morning so that he can meet Jonathan. We then read a diary entry from Jonathan himself. He's back to writing, and he is filled with a newfound determination. He has been filled with such self-doubt and worry throughout the past few weeks, thinking that there was something wrong with him, that he was going crazy, but now that he knows that this really happened, that this creature really did this to him, he is dead set on putting an end to it and claims to not be afraid anymore. Van Helsing and Jonathan meet, and once again, Van Helsing is just talking up Mina, so true king, and how he just wants to be best friends with the Harkers. Van Helsing just wants to be BFFs with everyone. It's really sweet and wholesome. Like, I think part of his plan is to beat Dracula with the power of friendship. Jonathan tells him that when it comes to finding the Count, he is with him heart and soul. And so this new connection has been made. There's kind of an opportunity for a new plan of action to form, and Van Helsing tells him that he'll follow up later. He's going to get back to London. Jonathan takes him to the train and buys him some newspapers to read while on the train from Exeter to London. And Van Helsing reads an article from one of the newspapers and is filled with worry. So then we jump to Seward's diary entry. He's just apparently chilling in his room or office or something when Van Helsing bursts through the door with the newspaper in his hand. He gives it to Seward. Seward reads it, and Van Helsing's like, "Oh my god, can you believe this?" And Seward's like, "Yeah, these kids have the same illness that Lucy had because they have the same marks on their necks." It's something like that. And Van Helsing kind of questions him about the article and tries to push him, tries to get him there, but Seward just can't quite get there. Van Helsing tells Seward that he's clever. Is he though? But he's such a man of facts and science, and they're just dealing with something beyond the realm of facts and science. And Van Helsing explains that there's more in the world that just can't currently be explained, and gives examples about past scientific discoveries, like the discovery of electricity, and how the men who discovered it, these were great acts of science, but they would have been considered like witches or otherworldly for past generations. We're in the constant process of making new scientific discoveries that would have baffled the minds of those that came before us, and this just happens to be one of those instances. And he spends multiple pages trying to properly explain to Seward what's going on, even brings up vampire bats as an example, and Seward is just super confused by everything he's saying, and he can't wrap his mind around any of it. So Van Helsing just has to come out and say it, that the marks on the kids' necks were not caused by the same illness that Lucy had, but they were in fact made by Miss Lucy. And that ends chapter 14. So chapter 15 continues right on with it, and Seward is absolutely livid with this accusation that Lucy is somehow still walking around and harming kids. But Van Helsing sticks to it, and he begs Seward to trust him. He brings up, how long they've known each other and how they've had to put their trust in each other before. And apparently he has once saved Seward's life, and I would like to hear more about that. And Seward really does trust Van Helsing. They've known each other many years, and he's always been a trustworthy figure and mentor to him, so he's able to trust him, but he still just doesn't believe that what he's saying is possible. But he agrees to go along with Van Helsing's plan. And so Van Helsing says that first they're going to go to the hospital and visit one of the children who had gone missing and was now returned and is recuperating in the hospital. And so they visit the child, and the child does have the marks on his neck still, and he talks about this beautiful lady. And so they leave this kid be. And then that night they go to the cemetery. They open up the West End tomb, and then to Seward's horror, Van Helsing breaks into Lucy's coffin. But to his even greater horror, they find Lucy's not in there. But this still doesn't convince Seward. He's just tosses it up to a grave robber might have taken the body somehow without the key to the tomb. Then they have a stakeout. They split up, each going to different sides of the cemetery, which is like horror movie 101. You do not do, fellas. But they wait for any signs of anything interesting. During the night, a pale figure happens into the cemetery. Seward walks towards it. He tries to get a better look at it, but the figure seems to vanish mysteriously into thin air. He then meets back up with Van Helsing, who now has a child with him that the figure happened to be carrying and left behind. Thankfully, the child is unharmed. Van Helsing tries to offer it up as proof, but Seward still doesn't see why he should believe that this has anything to do with Lucy. He says that it proves nothing. So then they leave the child where they are sure police will find it. Like, I get they don't want to be found with a missing child because that's like a one-way ticket to the clink. But I don't know, maybe at least leave it on like the doorstep of a police station and knock and ding dong ditch or something. They're like, yeah, we just left it. We know the police will be in this area. Bye, kiddo. Anyway, the next day, they go back into the West End tomb, once again, open up Lucy's coffin, and what do you know? Lucy's back in there. And Van Helsing again is like, see? Now do you believe me? And Seward is still not buying it. And my guy is just very stubborn. He's like, well, maybe a grave robber took her body and then just brought it back. Again, still without a key to the tomb and without any signs of break-in and without any signs of breaking into the coffin. It happens. Van Helsing finally then explains the vampire myth to Seward. That Lucy, while she is dead, she is not completely dead. She is what he calls undead, and is the creature that is drinking the blood of these kids. Van Helsing even brings up the fact that Lucy is still perfectly preserved. Like, her body doesn't even seem to be going through the processes that a normal dead body would. You know what I mean? And that is just signs that Seward can't deny. All of these weird instances are just really getting to him, so he's starting to come around, and he's very conflicted because he's looking at Lucy and he's thinking of this woman that he was in love with, then also of this creature that did her harm and is now doing harm to others, and he's also filled with a hatred. Van Helsing also explains how they can put a stop to what is going on here and actually free Lucy's soul. And the way to do that is, you know, the good old stake through the heart, garlic in the mouth, and head off the body. And he's just really going through it. And speaking of people who are going through it, Van Helsing then announces that he wants to get some backup. If they're going to take care of this problem, they need to include Arthur and Quincy as well. So they have a meeting with Arthur and Quincy, and Van Helsing asks if they would be willing to help him out with something and trust him. And Quincy says yes, he trusts Van Helsing. Arthur says he also trusts him and he will be willing to help as long as it doesn't cross any of his values, and Van Helsing assures him it won't. Then Van Helsing says that he wants to open Lucy's tomb, which is the least problematic of everything he's going to request, but still, understandably, Arthur is very adamant that no, he can't do that. He can't be messing with poor Lucy's grave. And he almost walks out of this, but Van Helsing asks him to stay and just hear him out. And Quincy says, yes, that's the least we can do. Like, he's probably thinking, like, just hear the guy out. We've been through so much with him. I'm sure he's a very logical, smart man. I'm sure there is a very reasonable explanation for all of this. Van Helsing then makes a comment about Lucy not really being dead. And of course, this freaks out Arthur even more. He's like, well, what do you mean she's not dead? Was she buried alive? Like, what's going on? My guy Abe is just not the best with words. And to highlight that point even further, he then straight out asks Arthur if he can off Lucy's head. As you can imagine, Arthur flips out. Van Helsing has to talk him down, and he's very stern and starts going on this monologue about how he's only doing this because he cares about Lucy and her soul, and he has a duty to God. He has spent weeks in England, time away from home, has traveled so far, has spent so much time trying to help Lucy, doing everything in his power, everything he could possibly think of to keep her alive, to heal her. He even breaks it to Arthur, bursts his bubble, that he too donated blood to Lucy, gave his own blood to save this woman. He's like, I would not have done that if I didn't respect and care about her. You need to trust me that this is all for her benefit. And Arthur takes all of this in. I don't know if I could be that understanding, but to his credit, he does trust Van Helsing. He states that while he doesn't understand it, he's willing to go along with it for now and see where Van Helsing is going with this and how this is all going to play out. And we'll see how this all plays out next time. These few chapters were a lot, and the next few chapters are going to be even more intense, even more action-packed, and we're just really in and out. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great rest of your Friday. Tune in Monday to see where our vampire hunters go from here. Bye!